and have a two-state solution that we've always fought for. And that way they would have the authority and the credibility to be able to push Hamas out of the Gaza Strip.
Who rebuilds Gaza?
That way Israel doesn't have to do it. The U.S. doesn't have to do it. Yeah, I know, I'm getting to it. And so then I know Israel would never pay for anything. They'd try to make us pay for it.
Right, so
who does? For all their bills. So you can't, so then you go to the Arab countries, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and you say, oh my God, we got a deal. We got a two-state solution. The Palestinians are going to finally have a homeland. Now you guys pay for the rebuilding. I guarantee you that they do that. That is an easy solution. The only thing blocking that solution, and that way America doesn't pay anything. There's no more killing. There's peace. The only ones blocking that are Israel, because they don't want two states. They want to steal Gaza, and now they just said it.
In today's video, Cenk Uygur absolutely destroys Piers Morgan and Dean Cain in a heated debate on the Gaza war. And let me tell you, Cenk came prepared with facts, history, and actual context, while Piers and Dean Cain, well, not so much. Piers, as usual, keeps twisting the narrative, and Dean, let's just say he should have stuck to acting, because this takes are straight out of a Fox News fever dream. Cenk shuts down their misinformation with cold, hard reality, breaking down the humanitarian crisis, Israel's military actions, and the hypocrisy in the West's response. So let's dive in and watch how Cenk Uygur shuts down Piers Morgan and Dean Cain in this heated debate.
They want
the other people,
They're going to steal it.
But the other people,
so there's no question about it.
Cenk, this all sounds utopian and so easy, except that, of course, you've still got a large Hamas presence, as we see with the release of all these hostages. We believe from American intelligence that for every Hamas terrorist who's been killed, they've already been replaced. The ideology may, if anything, have been fueled, and that ideology is committed to the destruction of all things Israel. So this full utopia picture
Piers,
you're painting it bears no relation to reality.
It's not utopia. It's super simple. No. First of all, Piers, you leave it to the Palestinians. That's why I'm saying do the deal with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. You leave it to the Palestinians to drive Hamas out. So that's their internal business. But in order to do that, you have to have a deal for a two-state solution. And you make the Middle Eastern countries, the Arab countries that have always said that they want an independent Palestine, pay for rebuilding Palestine. It makes perfect sense. And if you say,
it does, right to the point.
Work,
okay, look, you had me right to the point. You say the Palestinians.
If you go to it and say that it won't work, you're going to the same talking point about how Palestinians are always going to be terrorists.
I get it.
And that's a ridiculous, racist Israeli propaganda.
No, I don't think that at all. But I think the idea that the Palestinian Authority will simply go bang and Hamas disappear, forget it. Dean Cain, let me bring you in here. You've been waiting.
It's not simple, but yeah, of course that's what you do. And they might be brutal about it, but that's
Palestinian Authority is run
Palestinian business.
You've got a guy
not American business.
You've got a guy in his 80s running the Palestinian Authority, right? I do not entrust him, frankly, with all due respect, to run Hamas out of town. Anyway,
I'm giving you a perfectly viable solution.
All right,
perfectly viable. And you're coming out with excuses because Israel wants Gaza. Be honest.
I'm not coming out with any excuses.
Can you admit that Israel clearly wants to steal Gaza? Wasn't that the whole point of this self-defense?
Let me answer you. I certainly believe there are people in Netanyahu's cabinet, Ben-Gvir, Smodrich and others, who absolutely would like that. That's been my problem with this for a long time. Let me bring Dean Cain, who's been waiting patiently. I mean, Dean, look, a lot of people are outraged, as always, by what Trump has suggested, but is there merit to his apparent madness?
Absolutely, 100%. Look, what we're just failing to talk about here is October 7th. And I'll quote Douglas Murray here, you don't get to start a war and then complain when you lose it. And there are consequences to losing it. And Hamas needs to be absolutely driven out and ended in Gaza. That's unequivocal. Otherwise, they're going to completely keep going with the same circle, teaching people through UNRWA and the schooling there that Israelis are drinking your blood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're fomenting this. We're paying for half of this stuff through USAID and the other things that are going on. It's ridiculous. I think Israel has every right to step up. I think President Trump has made it clear that he's going to back them 100%, unlike this last administration. And I think we'll actually see something really happen in this area.
Now Piers keeps pushing the idea that Hamas will just regenerate, but let's be real. Why does Hamas exist in the first place? Because Palestinians have been under occupation, facing displacement, and have no path to self-governance. If you take away the root cause, Hamas loses its reason to exist. But that's the conversation Piers won't have. And then there's Dean Cain, who, let's be honest, knows nothing about geopolitics, but still jumps in with the most basic Fox News level nonsense. He actually says you don't get to start a war and then complain when you lose it. Like, what? Israel's response has killed tens of thousands of civilians, displaced millions, and created a full-blown humanitarian catastrophe. But Dean is out here acting like it's just some sports game where Palestine lost, so now they have to just deal with it. That's not how justice or human rights work.
But the problem seems to me is there is no real evidence that Hamas have been defeated. In fact, if anything, these propaganda videos they're showing with the hostages, there seem to be a lot of Hamas and a lot of support for Hamas. For these, certainly in the early ones, and I think that would be very.
I can't believe they don't love Israel.
Well, no, but this has been my problem again.
My problem again. 62,000 people there.
Yeah, but just go back to Dean.
Wow, they don't love Israel. That's so shocking.
Well, hang on, I'm going to go back to Dean.
Yeah, would you love your oppressors?
I wouldn't love my oppressors.
I wouldn't love people who murdered my family.
There, you sound like you sound like one of the Israelis.
You're wrong. The Palestinians didn't start this war. Israel started it with the occupation. You don't get to occupy Texas for 57 years, and if Texas fights back, go, oh, look at the terrorists in Texas. They started the war. No, Israel definitively started the war. America first. I'm tired of them. Israel first. Israel first. Give them $300 billion. Pay for their genocides. Get out of there. America first. And let these poor people, Palestinians, go.
The
number one problem is Israel and their infinite greed for land, and slaughter.
So just to be
clear, everybody knows that.
Just to be clear, Cenk, because you're going a bit further than you have before. Just to be clear, you think October the 7th was an inevitable consequence of the way the Palestinian people have been treated?
Guys, I hate October 7th. When Hamas does violence, they do so much damage to the Palestinians and the Muslims. But two things can be true at the same time. You could have something awful, and then you could use your brain to figure out, hey, why did that happen? And does anyone think that any American wouldn't fight back if they were occupied and humiliated and their land stolen and their families bullied and harassed and humiliated for 57 straight years? Of course we would fight back. Of course any set of human beings would fight back. But when Israel oppresses them and uses their might of their giant military to crush them, that's not terrorism. But if Palestinians fight back, terrorists! It's absurd. It's propaganda. It's both terrorism.
Okay.
So yes, the Hamas doing terrorism is despicable. And when Israel does 60 times the terrorism of Hamas, we should call them what they are, a terrorist state, and we should stop funding them. Don't send our taxpayer money to go fund terrorist government of Israel.
Honestly, Dean should just stick with acting at this point. He chimes in with the classic MAGA America first nonsense. But suddenly when it comes to Israel, America has to be all in to the tune of $300 billion in aid over the years. It's absolute hypocrisy. You can't scream America first while funneling US taxpayer money to fund a war machine that's slaughtering civilians. But MAGA logic never really checks out. And let's talk about October 7th. Cenk isn't excusing Hamas's attack, but he's pointing out the cause and effect that right-wingers refuse to acknowledge. If you occupy, humiliate, and oppress people for decades, violence will eventually erupt. That's just history. The real question should be, how do we stop it from happening again? And the answer isn't endless bombings and collective punishment.
All right, Batia, your response.
I just want to talk about this idea of Israel owning the United States government, because it seems to me that people who make that argument want to have it both ways. On the one hand, we give Israel exorbitant amounts of money. And on the other hand, somehow they control us through the money that we give them. And it's never been clear to me, like, what do they use for that control? So people will say AIPAC, but AIPAC spends about $3 million on local races in America, on congressional races. It's not a lot of money.
Number one donor in this campaign cycle.
The power that the Israel lobby actually the number one donor. They're literally among the American people is the fact that Americans are supportive of Israel. It's like the way that the NRA was popular when it was because Americans like their guns. These lobbyists they're powerful to the extent that they reflect views that the American people already have. And I think that's a really important point to point out here, because you cannot take an unpopular view and just use money in order to push it. And nothing has proven that, like this last election cycle.
That's what the drug companies do.
Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley outspent Donald Trump 2-1. Kamala Harris outspent Donald Trump 2-1. Money in politics has been revealed to be nothing compared to the will of the American people. This is an amazing thing. I mean, as a lefty, I was really against Citizens United. And it turns out, actually, the American electorate has a very clear idea of what it wants. If you look at Donald Trump's cabinet, every single person in that cabinet, which is, by the way, the most diverse ideological cabinet in American history.
No, it's not.
They all have a very similar view of what it means to be America first. There's only one thing that they all share, and they all seem to think that having a pro-Israel point of view is very much inherent in the America First ideology, because Israel is a good ally. Israel brings a lot to the table. We get a lot more bang for our buck. In fact, I think Israel should stop taking aid from the United States, because I think Israel has paid a much higher price for that aid.
I agree.
In terms of its sovereignty. It has been bad for Israel to take all this money, because it means that the Americans can tell them what to do. And they shouldn't accept that. They should be sovereign nations. I'll just make one more quick point. Sovereignty is not something you can give somebody. It's not a gift you can give to another nation. I feel for the Palestinian people, but the idea that somehow Israel, which won its sovereignty through winning wars, owes them something in the form of a sovereign state. This is just ridiculous. Like, this doesn't actually make any sense. Cenk, you said who should rebuild Gaza? You said the Arab nations should rebuild Gaza in exchange for the two-state solution. But what Trump is about to do is get a deal in which they rebuild Gaza without actually having to have a two-state solution. So he's actually sort of a little bit ahead of the game in the way that he often turns out to be.
Okay, let me bring in...
Monty, you know how unrealistic that is. You think Saudi Arabia is going to pay for Israel to occupy Gaza? Nobody's going to pay.
No, I don't think Israel wants to occupy Gaza at all.
They're not that big a sucker.
If Israel wanted to occupy Gaza, it would be occupying Gaza right now.
None of them will.
It clearly doesn't want to be occupying Gaza.
Yeah, none of them will do that.
Why, Cenk, according to you, look, why is Israel not currently occupying Gaza if they want it so badly?
Because they're waiting for America to give them permission. They were waiting for this election. That's why they supported Trump. So Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were terrible on this issue. They gave Israel everything they wanted, but Netanyahu made a deal with Trump, and that became obvious to me that the reason for that was just Trump was going to give them even more, which is just to let them grab this land in Gaza, which is going to cause a massive conflict. And guess who's going to pay for it? We're all going to pay.
First off, Bia is trying to downplay AIPAC's influence, acting like $3 million in congressional races is nothing. That's just dishonest. AIPAC and other pro-Israel lobbies spend tens of millions of dollars influencing US policy, not just in elections, but through constant lobbying, media pressure, and political blacklisting of critics. And the idea that Israel doesn't own US policy when we've sent over $300 billion in aid over the years is ridiculous. Then there's this absurd claim that Israel doesn't want to occupy Gaza. Really? They just flattened half of it and killed nearly 50,000 people, and now their officials are openly talking about annexation? If Israel didn't want Gaza, they wouldn't have blockaded it for 17 years. They wouldn't have bombed every attempt at Palestinian self-governance into the ground. They want the land, but not the people. That's why Netanyahu and his far-right allies refuse a two-state solution. This whole debate was just Cenk Uygur dismantling right-wing talking points on Gaza, while Piers Morgan, Dean, Cain, and Bia scrambled to defend Israel's occupation and US funding. Cenk shuts it all down, calling out the hypocrisy, exposing how Israel wants the land, not peace, and laying out the real solution: ending the occupation and stopping US funding of Israel expansion. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story, so you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.